Constantin Valdor, titled the First of the 10,000 and the Shield of the Emperor, was the first and the most renowned Captain General of the Legio Custodes, the elite guardians of the Emperor of mankind. He and others were crafted in the earliest days of the Unification Wars, and Valdor was more than a mere warrior. He was the template upon which all other Custodians are measured on. Where the Space Marines were created for conquest, the Custodians were fashioned for absolute loyalty, elite precision, and the personal defense of the Emperor himself, and for the grander vision of humanity. And at their head stood Valdor. Now for the uninitiated, he was basically what you'd get if a Swiss god, a war god, and a Renaissance philosopher were all stuffed into a 9-foot-tall, gold-plated killing machine with trust issues. He wasn't just a bodyguard, he was the bodyguard. If the Emperor sneezed, Valdor was already mid-air with a handkerchief, intercepting the hypothetical pathogen and stabbing it to death with a halberd made of oromite. So Valdor played a central role in the unification of Terra, leading the Custodians against the techno-barbarian warlords, against gene clans and the twisted psychers that ruled Earth in the Age of Strife. Valdor was one of the first Custodians, actually the first Custodian, which was crafted by the Emperor himself, a gene-engineered personal superhuman. Think Space Marines, but more elite, more paranoid, and with enough ego and brain power to outthink a Mensa meeting and outfight a kaiju. A handful of them could change the course of a war, and always, Valdor was at the center, wielding not just his blade, the Apollonian spear, but the political and strategic authority of the Emperor himself. It was Valdor who reinforced the Emperor's will during the purging of the Thunder Warriors, the unstable proto-Astartes who had won the Emperor's wars but were deemed too flawed and dangerous to be allowed to survive. Did Valdor like doing that? We don't really know. He didn't write a memoir, but he did it nevertheless because the Emperor said so, and when the Emperor says clean house, he don't really ask if that includes the furniture. So not much is known what Valdor did during the Great Crusade except that he was always by the side of the Emperor. And that's okay, but what did he do or what was his role during the Horus Heresy? Let's find out. So it all began with the raising of Prospero. Well, you might say that this isn't the heresy yet, but Horus here is already heretical by this time, and it's just that he's conducting a Black Ops campaign before the Great Reveal. So it begins here with Magnus the Red, Primarch of the Thousand Suns, who had one job: stop doing warp trickery. The Emperor even held the Council of Nicaea, where he told Magnus in no uncertain terms to put a stop to psyching and walk away, boy. But like a kid who thinks they're smarter than the parents, than the rules, Magnus got a vision of his brother Horus going full chaos frat boy on Davin, and decided that he, not the Emperor, would save the Imperium by smashing open the psychic wards on the Emperor's most secret project, breaking the rules and breaking the wards and breaking open a big sphincter into the webway. So this let in demons and hell loose into it. So here enter Constantin Valdor, the galaxy's most dangerous Golden Hall monitor. When Daddy's web project blew up with demons flooding in like a discount day at a warp carnival or Black Friday, Valdor was handed the Magisterium Lex Ultima, the divine permission slip to deliver the Emperor's will in its most lethal form. But even with this, he was to bring Magnus first to Terra, not with violence but with diplomatic censure, which in Imperial terms is like being told you're grounded by a chainsaw. Unfortunately, Leman Russ, the Primarch of the Space Worlds, also showed up there, and was actually sent there to Prospero to bring back Magnus along with them. And he went there with his axe, his wolves, and a grudge the size of Fenris. But before that, Horus has whispered in Russ's ear that Magnus should be put down like a sick, psychic dog. And Russ was happy to oblige because he didn't really like Magnus at all. Valdor, ever the professional, tried to keep things civil, but once the Thousand Suns started sprouting eyeballs in weird places and flinging warp fire around, diplomacy got flushed like a servitor with sentience. Valdor and his Custodians, along with the Mute Sisters of Silence, who were basically anti-Wi-Fi or walking psychojammers, descended on Prospero, and what followed was a gold-plated massacre. Custodians sliced through corrupted sorcerers like hot monomolecular butter, and the Thousand Suns got buried under their own hubris, battling the Custodians and the Space Wolves and the Sisters of Silence. And there was a planet worth of rubble when Magnus broke reality again, and then disappeared along with the remaining Thousand Suns into the warp, and then the only thing that was left on Prospero was a regret. Now back to Terra. While everyone was playing who betrayed whom across the galaxy, the real war, the worst war, was actually happening behind locked doors, deep beneath the Imperial Palace. This secret war is also known as the war within the webway. This is where Valdor really shined, not as a warrior, but holding the line in the bureaucratic nightmare that is Holy Terra. While the other Custodians were slicing reality-invading monsters limb from dimension-shifted limb, Valdor sat beside the Emperor on the Terran War Council, and when the Emperor went into the webway, he was there representing the granddaddy of humanity, playing 4D chess with Rogel Dawn, Malcador the Sigillite, and a collection of the most stressed-out individuals in the Imperium. His presence was a constant reminder that while others talked about saving humanity, he had been personally stabbing at that goal since before the Space Marines had teething issues. The Custodians were an MIA during the Heresy because they were lazy. It's just that they were too busy holding back hell itself, with nothing but Oromite armor, peerless martial skill, and discrimination. And Valdor was representing them in the Terran War Council. Now we come to the Retribution Fleet. After Horus' rebellion was uncovered following his betrayal on Isvan III and the purging of the Space Marines which were still loyal to the Emperor authorized a massive punitive expedition. 7 legions were committed, the first wave consisting of the Iron Hands, Salamanders, and the Raven Guard. But the true betrayal was awaiting behind them. The second wave, comprising the Iron Warriors, the Alpha Legion, Night Lords, and the Word Bearers, was supposedly to reinforce the Loyalists, but instead they joined the War Master. Thus was born the Dropside Massacre, one of the bloodiest and the most treacherous moments in the entire Horus Heresy. And back on Holy Terra, Valdor awaited in the throne room's shadowed halls, stoic, watchful, and untrusting. The reports from Isvan were delayed, and rumors abounded, but Valdor already knew. The Horus Heresy trailer gives us a glimpse of this moment, Valdor silent and grim, gazing from the walls of Terra as the galaxy begins to rot from the inside out. He senses betrayal. The legions are no longer what they were. He sees the treachery spreading, and Valdor begins to plot how to contain it by watching the loyalist legions as closely as the traitors, by taking command of the 10,000, the Custodes, and reinforcing the sanctity of Terra itself. So he was also in charge of the Execution Force, or the Assassination Force. See, when Horus bombed Isvan III into ash, the Imperium knew it had a problem. Malcador the Sigillite, the secret puppet master of everything shady, had a meeting with the assassin clades. Now, standard Imperial policy was kill quietly and alone, but Valdor, who is ever the overachieving team player of ultra-violence and really the smartest one around, he suggested something different. Combine all the assassins into one squad and send them after Horus like a psychopathic boy band of death. Thus the first Execution Force was born, a walking HR nightmare of blades, poisons, brain stabs, and one guy who can phase through walls. Maybe. Unfortunately, they got catfished by a Chaos clone. Horus sent a body double, and the assassins blew their load on a decoy. But still they learn a lot, including the fact that assassinating someone possessed by the 4 Chaos Gods of Madness isn't as easy as stabbing someone in the eye. When Dawn found out about this, he and Valdor had a philosophical slap fight about whether the ends justify the means. Dawn believed in honor, strategy, and looking people in the eye before punching them, but Valdor believed in doing whatever it took to keep the Emperor alive, even if that meant backstabbing a backstabber. And so the Emperor, as always, settled the argument with his own brand of wisdom. No more shadows, no more veils, no more sneaky stuff unless I say so. Oh yeah, something like that in the end. Since Valdor was in Holy Terra during the entirety or most of the time of the Horus Heresy, he wasn't really leading armies into the fray. That was the Primarch's responsibilities. He was there in Terra, defending the seat of humanity and defending the Emperor. And so he wasn't really out there. But then comes the Siege of Terra. After years of cosmic betrayal, the traitors finally knocked on Terra's front door, with a battering ram made of legions, demons, and orbital bombardment. The Legio Custodes, who had been stuck in the warp fighting hell for a decade, finally got to stretch their legs and stab traitors in places that used to be lungs. Valdor, who had metaphorically been on a command chair during most of the duration of the heresy, took up his Guardian Spear in hand and stacked up more body count than all of Pornhub combined. His Custodians were the gold wall that held the line when all others cracked, but even they couldn't stop Horus when the War Master pulled the ultimate drama move, dropping the shields on his ship and practically begging for a final confrontation. The Emperor, tired of literally everything, or he had some wisdom that he didn't tell us, teleported onto the Vengeful Spirit with Valdor, Dawn, Sanguinus, and a bunch of others. So as Valdor and his Custodians breached the chamber aboard the Vengeful Spirit, the world itself began to change. The ceiling tore open like flesh and figures descended upon them through the rift. One of them landed before Valdor, a massive silent and armored being like a walking fortress. Valdor reacted instantly. His thrust was perfect. The spear should have killed the guy who is known as Abaddon in a heartbeat, but it didn't. Abaddon actually caught the blade with his bare hands, and in that moment, time broke. Through the spear, Valdor felt everything. Knowledge flooded him from the future, not in words, but in pure overwhelming truth. Centuries went by, millennia went by, and he saw a singular will that would forge chaos into a weapon. He saw the long war. He wasn't just fighting Abaddon the Despoiler. He was staring at the future, a future that was and will be. And in that moment of unbearable clarity, Valdor did the impossible. He let go of his spear, and then with the suddenness of a collapsing star, Valdor punched Abaddon right in the face. Boom! The moment snapped back to violence. Abaddon reeled back, flailing with the spear still clutched in his bleeding hands. But chaos and gravity decided to pull them away from each other, maybe for another final confrontation in the future? Anyway, snap back to reality and oops, there goes gravity. Inside the chaos festoon nightmare ship the Vengeful Spirit, things went predictably awful. Sanguinius died heroically and gorgeously, I might add, at the hands of Horus. And then the Emperor and Horus finally had their boss fight. The result? Horus obliterated, the Emperor's body ruined, and Valdor, the golden guardian of humanity, failing in his one job, to protect the Emperor. So after the heresy ended and the Emperor had his nap on the golden throne, Valdor just handed over the reins of the most elite warrior force in the galaxy and walked off into myth like a golden version of Bigfoot. Racked by guilt, Valdor resigned, handed off his Captain General badge and disappeared. Some say he died. Others whispered he walked into the webway. Personally, he probably just got tired of saving a species that can't go 5 minutes without summoning a demon. But that's just me. And his legacy lives on in Imperial military hardware like the Valdor Tank Hunter, which like him is overbuilt, armored in gold, and exists only to ruin your day from 3 miles away. And that is what was up with Valdor during the Horus Heresy. And with that we come to the end of this video. If you like this one, then check this other one in the end screen. And also do hit the like button for support and smash that subscribe button to be a part of Legio Notebook. Till the next time, take care, boys.